Our next witness is Mr. Steve Cousins, the Vice President of Refining for Lion Oil and Chairman of the National Petrochemical and Refiners Association Manufacturing Committee. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Markey, Ranking Member Upton, and members of the subcommittee.
Can you move that microphone in just a little bit closer?
My name is Steve Cousins. I am the Vice President of Refining for Lion Oil Company. My training is as a chemical engineer, and I've spent my 31-year professional career at our El Dorado, Arkansas refinery, which has been in operation for 85 years. Our refinery produces approximately 70,000 barrels per day, and our main products are gasoline, diesel fuel, and asphalt. We employ 1,200 people directly at our unionized El Dorado facility, and there are approximately 3,600 other individuals that depend indirectly on our plant for their livelihoods. And like many in the audience here today, we wear hard hats to work too. We aren't big oil. We're a small rural oil refiner. The subject of this hearing is extremely important to Lion Oil. In our opinion, the proposed allocation of allowances will result in the shuttering of our refinery and the loss of the 1,200 jobs we have worked for decades to bring to and sustain in southern Arkansas. If Congress includes transportation fuels in a cap-and-trade program and makes refiners hold allowances for those products, it must provide the industry with a fair and equitable allowance allocation. According to EPA's best estimates, the combined carbon dioxide emissions from domestic petroleum refineries and the consumer combustion of refined products constitute approximately 35% of the nation's current CO2 emissions. These emissions also represent 52% of the legislation's total emissions allowance pool. And yet the bill, as currently drafted, only provides our industry with 2% of the CO2 emissions allowances. Compare that proposed allocation to other industries. Electric generators will receive allocations for 90% of their CO2 emissions. So-called energy-intensive industries will receive allocations for 100% of their CO2 emissions. And remarkably, domestic auto manufacturers, which are not responsible for the CO2 emissions from their vehicles at all, will also receive a larger allocation for CO2 emissions than refiners. Simply stated, American refiners, like our business, are dramatically shortchanged in this bill. I'm not an economist, but I strongly believe that if the bill's current allocations stand, the impact on Lion Oil will be profound. At a cost of $20 a ton, Lion Oil will have to spend $180 million a year to purchase allowances in the first years of the cap-and-trade program, just to cover our obligation for consumer emissions or fuels. Further into the program, our company could be forced to spend $750 million by the year 2030 and nearly $2 billion a year by the year 2050. Over the last 23 years, Lion Oil's actual average net profits have been $13 million per year. It's not hyperbole to say that the addition of $180 million per year to the operating costs of a refinery that averages $13 million a year in profit will make our survival impossible. We cannot offset these large carbon costs through profits from other lines of business. We don't have any other lines of business. We don't have gasoline stations. We don't have oil wells. Lion is a small, independent refiner. We're not a big oil company. Our operation has to pay for itself, or the plant cannot continue to operate. In short, without a fair and equitable allowance allocation, our company will be unprofitable in year one and insolvent within a matter of months, not years. Proponents of this bill suggest that we will simply pass the compliance costs through to consumers in the form of higher retail pump prices for gasoline and diesel. Even assuming that 90% of the carbon costs could be passed through, the remaining 10%, or $18 million per year, is still 150% of our annual profit. No company can survive those kind of negative financial results for long. Foreign refiners already have a competitive advantage over American businesses. This bill would effectively outsource our energy future and eliminate hundreds of thousands of American jobs in our industry, as well as those at companies that rely on our industry. There is a new refinery in India. It's already expanding to over 1 million barrels per day. It's not designed to sell any product into India. It's designed to sell its product to the United States and Europe. They don't have to meet the U.S. EPA standards. They don't have to meet U.S. OSHA standards. they don't have to compensate for their on-site CO2 emissions. They would be more than happy to take the place of Lion Oil and 15 other small refiners in this country. In closing, I'd simply stress that this legislation should not be passed in its current form to protect the quality jobs we provide, to protect the consumers, farmers, and truckers we supply with higher gasoline and diesel fuel prices. Appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today and look forward to any questions you may have.